Welcome to Feel Good for Men Who Want Change, the podcast all about healthy masculinity and what we as men can do to show up as the best version of ourselves. Now, today's episode is pretty unique, if I say so myself. I'm interviewing Marcus and James Stone, father and son, who talk today about what it's meant for their relationship as Marcus escaped his corporate career and feeling like he had no purpose in life. Now, James and I know each other. We did a coaching course together, and we came up with this idea to do an episode with the two of them, because as much as we do a lot of these conversations in silo, what it means to be a father, what it means to find purpose in life, the son having a relationship with their father, we felt it'd be really interesting to do that as a trio. And so that's what you'll hear today. I really enjoyed it. A lot of emotion came up, as you might expect, but also a lot of interesting questions and reflections around what it means to have a career that you don't necessarily find purpose in, and what it means to see your father go through that and the impact it then has on your own life. I really enjoyed it. I hope you do too. So please welcome Marcus and James Stone. All right, Marcus, James, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you very much.
It's
great to be here. Yeah, thanks for inviting us.
Not at all. And we should say, if anyone's watching on YouTube, James, your leg is in a cast. I hope you're not in discomfort just sitting still.
No, not my finest moment. I've had a compound open fracture, and that's where I'll leave it for the description.
Yeah.
For anyone, who doesn't like gore. I haven't shown you a picture yet.
No.
It's pretty miserable. So the last 3 months I've been pretty static.
Yeah.
But the boot is for protection, really. So I'm not in any pain.
All right. Well, look, maybe we'll save that picture for another day rather than dive into it. But yeah, look, just, it's great to have you both here. When the idea came up to speak to both of you, I was really excited, because I suppose a lot of time when we're talking about men and masculinity, we have these conversations in silo, right? Like what it's like to be a father and how to think about your career and, the relationships that sons have with their fathers. But it felt like a unique opportunity to have that conversation together. So we'll kick that around for the next hour and see where we get to. But I suppose, at the origin of it and the origin of how we came to talk about this was Marcus, your background and your career and the turning point you had there. So maybe you could just paint us a bit of a picture of your sort of quote unquote corporate life before you made any changes, and set the scene for us that way.
Yeah, sure. My memory of coming out of school, I went to, did the sixth form, did the A levels, and just had no idea what I wanted to do. My father was a chartered surveyor. He'd gone into that fairly organically and been very successful in his area of that land agency, and he loved it. And he loved meeting people and talking to people and all of that. I had no idea, so I scooted around for a bit looking at various things. I remember going to an air traffic control centre. That was one thing that was suggested I could do, and I was like, God, I'm not sure I could do that. So ended up falling into surveying. I thought it was there. It looked like it could be quite a varied career. I never had a real pull to it. Did a land management degree at Leicester, came out, did the milk round, ended up at a company called Healy & Baker, which doesn't exist anymore, but one of the big four agency practices. Fell into investment, because that's where they put me, and ended up, I suppose at Healy & Baker, it was a bit of a mixed bag. And after 3 years, I don't know, almost from the word go, I just didn't know what I was doing, really. So I left there, went to another company, became a specialist in shopping centre and retail investment, created a shopping centre team with one of the partners there. And my role was always very logical, analytical. I created a spreadsheet to analyse a shopping centre and its income flows and we were buying and selling shopping centres. I did, I don't know, 7 years at that Donaldson's, and then went to Stratton Park. Within the commercial world, that was my big step up into a really high pressure, aggressive commercial background. And again, so I had this thing that I was always successful. And my career progressed, and I became a partner in that practice. And we had a lot of success in our team, just me and my my equity partner. And financially, that was successful. But I was always just left thinking, I actually never knew what I was doing. Seemed to be doing okay, but it never felt successful to me. So I had a bit of a meltdown towards the end of that. Various things happened in my life. My mum passed away in 2003. Died of skin cancer, and then I had skin cancer myself in 2005. So that was all a bit of it felt like a growing wake-up call coming, and I took some time out. I took a 6-month sabbatical.
Yeah.
Decided not to go back there. Again, had this like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Ended up going back into property, but it was a much happier time with a property company.
Yeah.
But still lacking this ultimate purpose. So I knew inside me that there was something that I was supposed to be doing, but I could never find what it was. I looked outside of me at all of these different things and could never find it. And so just kept falling back into property and thinking, this is it. I think actually this is going to be it. And then I don't know when it was, 2013, had a series of interesting events that led me to coaching. It's a slightly circuitous route, and it started with an envelope landing on my mat, which was a brown, boring envelope.
Right.
That I looked at it instantly. I knew there was something in there, and it was a call to jury service. Very weird. I couldn't wait to go. Everybody around me was saying, why do you want to do that? You can get out of it. You can defer it.
Yeah.
No, why would I do that? This is the best thing that's happened to me for ages.
Different from the day job,
Yeah, exactly. Change. Met some people, met one person in particular, and it started taking me down a different route, and coaching appeared in front of me. It was an advert in the back of the Evening Standard that just jumped off the page. And it was for Animas, which of course you and James know well, having been through the course. So I did the course back in 2014 and just loved it. I did this oh my God, I have finally found the thing that I've been searching for. And it was basically because I did some inner work that changed my outer world, and things appeared in front of me as opposed to me going out and searching. So there was a lot of reconnecting with who I really was. It felt like up to then I'd been playing a role, trying to be somebody that I wasn't, trying to be somebody that other people expected and wanted me to be, or that I felt I had to be in a competitive commercial environment to survive. And what I realize now is I was just going against my core values all the time. I didn't know what my core values were. And it suddenly started making sense with coaching. So then I changed. We were talking about this earlier. I gradually transitioned. So I stayed involved in the property company for a couple of years. That gave me a nice baseline of revenue, which allowed me to take the financial pressure off, creating something immediately in the coaching world.
And we'll come on to that a little bit, but something that interests me in what you're saying there is, at the start you said that you fell into things a few times, and there was something that you were supposed to be doing, but in the end you were sort of living the life you felt like you should lead or act like you should live. Where do you think those shoulds came from?
Well, my instinct goes straight to my upbringing. And I think particularly my father's influence. So I ended up going into a career very similar to his. And the messaging I remember from childhood was things like, get one of the main professions, have a steady career, commit, be reliable, do whatever's asked of you, be useful. And if you're not a partner by the time you're 30, you'll be seen as a failure. That was another one of those messages that. And as I was going through my 20s, I was thinking, shit, I'm nowhere near a partner. I'm going to be a failure, And that just added pressure, I think. So there was a lot of, I should be doing this. and this is the right thing to do. And commit, have a family, create stability, be the provider. And so that led to, I suppose, if I think about it, a feeling of being trapped. Trapped in terms of, I can't stop because what's going to happen to us and my family if I stop because I'm the main breadwinner here. I have no choice. It felt like I had no choice.
Yeah.
And now, of course, I look at it and I think you've always got a choice. Some choices are harder than others. But actually, I never allowed myself to consider there was a choice, even to like blue sky think, what if?
Yeah.
Whereas now, of course, I know it's okay to consider things, to imagine things, to dream about things, and to run them through, because you never have to take that choice, but at least acknowledge that there's always a choice for you, however hard those choices are.
Yeah, I think sometimes people rule out choices because they deem the trade-off to be too big.
Yeah.
And you just shut off an option for you. And I think that precludes even envisaging some sort of different future for yourself or different career or turning point that if you were willing to, phase in some of those trade-offs, you might be able to pursue.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also held me back from having conversations with Sylvia, my wife.
Yeah.
Because the expectation was, which may or may not have been true, that she'd think I was mad and not be happy at all. And I think there was an element of truth in that.
Yeah.
But I never gave it the possibility, really.
Yeah.
But I also couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
I couldn't find this thing. So it's like, I don't have any choice. I've got nothing to go to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It was an uncomfortable place to be. I can tell you I was very unhappy.
Yeah.
I loved some of the camaraderie. So it was always about people, meetings, like first 10 minutes. How are you? What are you up to?
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. And then
yeah.
as soon as somebody says, right, let's get down to business, I was like, oh.
Yeah, the fun
Here
part's
we go.
over.
Yeah.
Well, James, you've been very patiently sitting there listening to your dad's backstory.
He loves talking.
Banging on.
No. Tell us a bit about your own journey, the different paths you've had and what it was that drew you to coaching.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shorter story, I guess, because I haven't been living as long. But the coaching thing has been very recent for me, but it clearly hasn't been just out of the blue. Oh, you're suddenly interested in like digging deeper and finding out what drives people. That's always been there for me. So yeah, I guess I could start. I went to university, so I came out of school, similar really, didn't know what I wanted to do, but I kind of stumbled across a course in archaeology and anthropology, and I thought it just looked so much of what I'm interested in. There was a bit of historical study with the archaeology, but it was mainly about finding out why people have done things through, like, when it's anthropology, literally talking to people, finding out where they're from, but also the archaeological record is what do people leave behind? Like, if you were to die tomorrow, and no one was able to talk about you, what would they know about you through your material record? And that's something that is changing now, has changed forever. What do we leave behind? What trace of us is there?
Yeah.
I loved that. And I really enjoyed the course, but I came out of it like most arts degrees, unfortunately, in that all of the advice and careers stuff that you get at university or colloquially from your friends and family is not designed for people who are going into non-STEM or like just general big four kind of careers. Yeah. So you come out like, oh, well, I really like this, but I don't know what I want to do. And you get told anthropology is great for everything. So for someone like me, okay.
Yeah.
So I can do anything. Great. Yeah. Where do I start? Archaeology, niche.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to enjoy it forever, you go into academia rather than commercial archaeology. So I was like, what do I do? I was really hell-bent on conservation and getting out to places where it's life or death and animals are like basically at a head with humans, and I wanted to be the side talking to communities and bringing about positive change, creating infrastructure that allows people to respect ecology and the planet more, rather than just the scientific side of studying the decline of everything. I wanted to be part of a solution. But I had to volunteer loads before that, obviously. So I was doing a temp job for a few months, was applying for loads of volunteer work, got a position to go to Ghana for 5 months to study a white-naped mangabe, to study its behaviour on like a reintroduction project. And I was meant to go, but I was meant to go in April 2020.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So COVID struck and the borders closed and I stayed at home. So I had an interesting lockdown where I didn't have anything to do for the first few months of it. So I jumped into a civil service job that was going for a year. Rubbish. 100% at home. I discovered the only thing that I was interested in was everything outside of the job. Okay. So I was able to get out on my bike, cycle a load, stay fit. But the job was mind-numbingly boring in the administrative engine of the civil service, which, I mean, can't say too much for it. It's just inefficient.
Yeah.
So someone who wants to be productive and everything, it doesn't actually, it's not set up for that. You end up chasing your tail around, asking people for work. Yeah. So I just kind of eventually snapped. Yeah. Needed something, was very, cabin fever was pretty rife for me right then, even though I didn't realize it snuck up on me. I was like, crap. Yeah. I can't get a train anymore without feeling anxious and nervous. So my world was so small. So I applied for a job with the RSPB. Okay. As a membership fundraiser, which is literally face-to-face, out on the streets, which was interesting to start with, because I had to wear a mask, all these things. Yeah. But it was one of the best things for me in the last 5 years of my life, in that it got me back out there, got me engaging with people, almost, I don't know how to word it properly, but studying interactions and finding out different ways of talking to someone. Like, if I say it this way, how do you react? Yeah. So, when you're fundraising, if you're just monologuing away, like, oh, it's really important, like wildlife, and you kind of lose eye contact and you don't use your hands, no one's interested. So it's just a big realization to me, and communication is, oh my God, when you start to talk like this, probably the same with podcasting and everything, when you started, you have to enunciate everything and you feel like an idiot, but you realize that is effective communication. Yeah. So that was a really amazing journey for me. It was hard.
And quite bold of you to do that, recognizing that you were feeling anxious, feeling insular, as a lot of people did, in those first lockdowns, particularly home working fully, to throw yourself right to the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah. So it was really scary. In the first few months, I was still living at home at the time. So you saw it. It was just really genuinely hard just to get anyone, because the barrier for success in fundraising is getting someone to join the charity, and that's really hard. You only get a few people a day if you're doing well. You get nothing days. So you go out and you talk to loads of people, you have amazing conversations and you feel quite good, but then you get centered around the point of, well, that wasn't a good day because you haven't signed anyone up. You've just cost the charity money. I mean, that's not what my manager said. Yeah. Of course, they're more supportive than that. It feels
quite binary.
But it feels, you feel that way. You're like, they're like, oh, so how was your day? Oh, I didn't get anyone today, but I had some great conversations. Yada, yada, yada. Yeah. I got about 13 months out of that before I couldn't do it anymore. Yeah. And that's when I started this very strange diversion, in that I decided to go traveling for a few months. So I went to Southeast Asia, went to visit my family in Australia, and just, again, completely disconnected from the real world and stress and everything. Wanted to just do things for me and meet people and continue that journey of like having fun and trying to do new things and push myself, because I was realizing that the more I push myself, the more I put myself out of my comfort zone, the more I succeed and thrive and learn new things and develop as a person. So I came back from there ecstatic, and I'd actually planned the next 6 months of my life whilst I was there. I met someone who was saying, "Oh, have you ever done like seasonal work?"
Yeah.
Because I was talking about getting into bike shops and something to do with cycling. And they said, "Yeah, have you ever done a season? You can go out to Greece for 6 months, ride your bike every day, talk to people, and just it's a great time."
Yeah.
So I was like, "Yeah." So I applied whilst I was traveling, got that position, and yeah, that was another transformational part of my life. In that I was, I think, quite rare for seasonal work, but I was able to take all of the new bikes that were delivered to there, build them all up,
Yeah.
create all the routes, do the risk assessments, everything. So it was my baby.
Yeah.
And I had so much creative freedom. So I made a wildlife tour, which was the first ride of the week.
Yeah.
Take people out and talk to them about all the things I'm interested in, all these road rides, and just being a leader for the first. I mean, I'd done it a bit at uni. I was president of my tennis club for a year. But it was the first time I was like, wow, I've got loads of control here. And people look to me, adults, like
and looking to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What the hell? And the nature of it was that it's quite an expensive thing to go to these all-inclusive resorts. So a lot of these people are CEOs and like people in big time jobs with lots of stresses and strains. Then they come on holiday and they're like, oh, where do I go?
Yeah.
It's like, what, are you looking at me?
Yeah.
I'm 25 and I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But it was amazing for me. But yeah, there was kind of a catalyst moment. So my parents came to visit me.
Yeah.
At the end, in the last couple of weeks. And at the start of the week, I'd do this briefing. And I'd say, oh, hi, yeah, I'm with the cycling team. We've got all these routes, blah, 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 blah. And Dad afterwards came over to me and he was just like, that was brilliant. Like everyone else, there's no one else at this resort who's taking a briefing like that. No one's as engaging, as good with people as you are right there. And I was like, oh, thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dad. Really lovely thing to say and lovely thing to hear.
It really stood out.
Yeah.
Really
and it just, I think you were like, I think you'd make a good coach.
Yeah.
And that started it for me. So I came back home after the season, a bit lost actually, because I'd had such a good time. And I was like, well, I'll go back and I'll get a job in a bike shop like I planned. And I didn't really know didn't really find any traction. But I actually moved up to Edinburgh with the guy I did the season with. So that was a huge change again. But I was still like, oh, this coaching thing, I think I need to explore that, you know? So I started the course. Yeah, and a year later, it pretty much brings us to now.
And maybe Marcus, as the most experienced coach of the three of us, perhaps at this point, for those who aren't familiar, you could just give a short overview of like what coaching is and how we might be spending our time if we were coaching.
Oh my God. What is coaching? Yeah. Human development and change work. It's in that field, but it occupies quite a unique place in there. In that, it's essentially at its best, at its purest, in its purest form. It's non-hierarchical, non-advisory, side-by-side, client-led work where you are trying to help somebody to discover what it is that they need to do or want to do, and help them to find their own resources to move towards that without you being the person that creates that change for them. So it's helping people to empower themselves to change and to create whatever it is that they're looking to create, mainly through conversation. And I mean, for me, there was always something I always said to people in my former career, what I'd really like is a job where I sit and talk to people and have conversations with them and get to know them. And I help them, but I never have to advise them because I don't know anything. So, but who's going to pay you for that? And then suddenly discovered that in essence, there was this thing called coaching, which enabled me to do that. So, and how people might work as coaches, that's one of the beautiful things I think about coaching is that there's no necessarily prescribed way of doing that. And people often end up, what it did for me was open a doorway into a new world of possibility. And so there's quite formal things that you might do. You might set up your own one-to-one coaching practice. You might work with organizations in a salaried role, but it leads into things like podcasting, training and facilitation, also going sideways into things like mentoring, counseling, and becoming like blending different ways of working. So for me, it opened up. I imagine I'd come into this, walked through this door into a stadium, and suddenly thought, I'm home.
Yeah.
This is where I'm meant to be. I spend a bit of time in the middle of the stadium, and then noticed that there were different stands.
Yeah.
It's like, actually, I think that might be my stand over there. Then getting into the stand for a bit and noticing that there were rows. And then noticing there were individual seats. And for me, it's been that kind of process of just slowly finding where I think I might belong.
And James, how old were you when your dad became a coach?
So I must have been 15, 16. Maybe a bit younger when you started to change like your career, but when you became a coach, like more obviously, would have been 15 or 16.
And what are your memories of, I guess, your dad when he was in the corporate world, living without purpose, as you've said, to your dad today?
Yeah, well, it's something that's really fascinating because this change happened when I was changing a lot as well. So it's very difficult to tie up the two as, well, I noticed that he was around more and I noticed that he was like taking more of an interest in me as a person and all of that. Like, it's impossible to, I think, distill that because I was going through puberty, a huge change in my personality in regards to being, I guess, anxious for the first time in my life. So my memory of it is that it's more memory through people. Obviously, my mum was incredibly nervous because the stability that Dad had provided for his entire career was changing and melting away. And Dad was doing all these new things, meeting all these new people, doing all these exciting things. And the way I saw it initially was, oh my God, what's going on? Because I was existing through my mum. But then quite quickly I was able to see the merits of it. I think compared to my brother and mum, I've been more willing or able to see it earlier as something that's amazing and positive for you. I think, excuse the profanity, but I think there was a lot more from the other side that it's kind of, well, what is that? It's bullshit. Yeah. Like, that's not a real thing. How do you, like, that's not work, that's not this, that. Whereas I believe, more open to the idea and excited by it, trying to be. And I can see how it was a really tough time for my dad. But I was going through my A-levels. I had my own stuff to do. So a lot of my mind was actually occupied on myself at that time. But I did notice that my dad was around more, which is the biggest part, because you were no longer working 5 days a week, getting up, leaving the house before I'm up, getting home at 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening. Yeah. And just all he wants to do is crash.
What comes up for you hearing that, Mark?
God, so it's interesting to put myself back into that time. It was a very painful time, but it was an incredibly exciting time for me. And life just felt like it suddenly accelerated. And I was just like, this is amazing. But at home, it was quite painful. And there were at times when I felt I had to restrict myself, bring my energy back in to be the person that I used to be and not talk about all these exciting things because it just didn't feel like it was being well received. I mean, I do look back at it as well and think I was an arse at the time as well. I was quite evangelical about it because it's like, oh my God, I found this thing. Why can't you just be happy for me? I've been searching for this all my life and not really being empathetic enough to understand how it was received from the other side. One of the, I don't think I've ever told you this, but one of the most relieving moments or confirmatory moments was when you said that you wanted to train as a coach. And it was like one of the first times I'd actually heard anybody acknowledge that this had been a worthwhile thing. And for one of my sons to want to follow in my footsteps was just like, oh my God,
Yeah.
this is amazing. Because that thing I talked about, that I wasn't sure how it would be received with my wife, was nothing against my wife, but my fears were confirmed during that period. But I realize now that it was partly because of the way that I was. I would handle things very differently now, but 30 years of built up, like being repressed, and suddenly the genie's out the bottle. It's like, there's no way it's going back in now, baby.
Yeah.
What were you repressing?
Me. So, like, just being who I am. I mean, the way that I think about this is that in my career, maybe not so much at home, but in my career, I was, as I said, being somebody that either I felt I had to be or that other people expected me to be in order to be successful in that environment. And like, not enough authenticity, not enough opportunity to do what I want to do, just constraining myself into this mold. Whereas in the coaching world, actually, what I think I loved about it most was suddenly there was this permission to be you. And actually, more than that, it's so important. It's like, it's the key thing that's going to unlock relationships with people, is if you can be everything and allow yourself to be vulnerable and real and in touch with everything inside you and be you, then that comes across. And it's the thing I think that has served me so well now, is that it took me so long to be in an environment where that was welcome, that I just loved it. So I think that's one of the things that I allow myself to do well, is to just be me in these environments.
James, I don't get the sense that you had to shed as much to step into coaching that perhaps you did, Marcus, and obviously in terms of years spent in your career, but also I guess the way it sounds like you felt you had to show up. I don't get the sense, perhaps, James, that you had to do that same transformation.
No, I never got far enough into adulthood, I think, to have to peel back a lot of entrenched structure and behaviors. And I mean, I've grown up looking at the work you do, not now, property and surveying, and my mum does the same thing. So, and just looking at it as the Antichrist, as like, as that. Don't want to do that. Yeah. Because all I hear is, this, it's rubbish. And I'm like, my mum has had various jobs, and they've all seemed to cause massive amounts of stress and unhappiness at various points. And then obviously Dad is not really around, but insanely stressed and never talking to me about how amazing his job is. And how, like, guess what I did the other day? I went and surveyed a shopping mall
and built that spreadsheet.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which maybe I'd find interesting. You never know, but you are like the product of the people around you and what people say about things. And all I heard was negativity about the property world. So yeah, it's something like that. And I was never inspired by the idea of property. So I knew that that's something I didn't want to do. Whether I'd be good at it or not, I don't really care. So yeah, in essence, I was able to just see coaching from a fairly early age as something that, well, that looks good.
I wonder if you also saw, and tell me if I'm on the wrong path, I'm wondering if you also saw your dad, a key male role model, make a change to pursue something he was passionate about, rather, in your formative years, rather than continue to slog away at a career that you didn't enjoy.
Potentially. I think a lot of that will be subconscious. And yeah, perhaps seeing someone take control of their life in a way like that means like receptive to the idea that there is flexibility, there's wiggle room in these things. Because, I mean, the nature of growing up in, I can fairly say, a fairly privileged upbringing is most people are doing traditional jobs. So you don't really get exposed to the variety that I now know exists. So if Dad hadn't come out of his career, probably wouldn't have. I don't think I'd have found coaching. Perhaps maybe I'd have done what Dad did and discovered something like this later in my life. I probably would have just been like, well, you know what can I do for myself? What can I make of myself? And it's going to be something corporate and office based, 9 to 5 based.
Really interesting to think about, because I think when I was working in my former career, if you were now doing what you were doing, I would be thinking, what the hell are you doing? Whereas like now I don't think like that. And I think my dad, rest his soul, died last week. Yeah. He would definitely not have understood what you were doing. And I know you had a few conversations with him, and he certainly had, what is James doing now? Yes. It's like, he's doing this. Well, when is he going to, and these kind of questions. And I know for Will, my other son, and James, those kind of conversations with that older generation was always around, what are you doing? What have you got a job now? This kind of thing.
Well, it's an interesting reminder of, the cultural manifestation of like masculinity, what it is to be a man, what it is to be a provider, as you said earlier, and how that follows down from generations, but how also there can be an interrupt in that generational pass down, right? Like Marcus, for example, if you hadn't had that epiphany that you had where you were coming out into the stadium and you were still slogging away in the real estate role, there's a world in which, James, you still just don't have a version of this in your life, which is like, oh, actually, maybe I can go and do this other thing, even if it wasn't coaching. Oh, I've seen my dad take control of his life and career because he was unhappy with it and pivot it over here. And I think it's interesting, people thinking about this conversation around masculinity and good male role models and like, where are men getting their advice from? Like, just to see it played out, the intergenerational nature of this and how we can take a lot from our parents.
Yeah, and I've got nothing against the property industry at all. Sure. It wasn't me, so there's definitely something to think about there in terms of what is you, and where do you have those conversations at a young age to understand that? It's just not there. And also some of the messages that my dad gave me were messages that have served me incredibly well in my life. And I do look back and I think one of the benefits of doing what I did, even though it was unhealthy for me overall, was that it gave me the bedrock and the freedom to be able to do what I'm doing now, which, was an amazing thing. So it's like, I don't regret any of that. I do sometimes look back and think, well, what if I'd discovered something like coaching at an earlier age? Or what if I had? What would that mean? I wouldn't have met my wife and have these children. I'd be living a different life. What does that mean? Yeah. I don't know that it means anything, but I'm here now, and I've got this amazing opportunity. But part of that is because of the life I've led up to that point. So
yeah. No, that's a powerful way to think about it. I think too often, if men are feeling stuck or like they themselves are in a career that isn't fulfilling, there's a tendency to look back and think about time wasted instead of, as a lot of coaching is to look forward at, the possible alternatives ahead of you and how you might manifest those.
But if I'd got to my deathbed and it hadn't changed, I know there would have been a massive regret there, because I had this feeling that there was something else for me. So I'm eternally grateful that I found that and had an opportunity to do that. It feels like at this moment that I could go beyond without regret on that at least.
Yeah, it must feel pretty good to be able to say that.
It's very freeing. I feel my life feels much freer. Yeah,
it looks it. Lots of baths.
Lots of baths. Sitting around on the sofa watching television.
Yeah, because your time not working it's not it's not like negative time like in a more traditional job.
No.
So if you haven't got anything to do, you haven't got anything to do, and that's quite funny to watch.
And I'm not a particularly driven person, even though I had to appear driven. That's an interesting thing. I never really thought about that, but I had to appear to be competitive and driven in the environment I was in before. Whereas the person I really am is somebody who just quite likes to accept where he is. And I still have that battle. So it's still been programmed so strongly to think about what I should be doing and what's the next thing. That I have that battle. The transition was quite hard because I kept thinking I should be doing something else. This isn't work. The definition between work and non-work was quite clear in my old world. Suddenly it wasn't. So it felt like I wasn't working. And that was tough.
Yeah.
Really had to get a grip of myself and just like, okay, no, this is all right.
Yeah.
It's all moving towards something that I just don't see at the moment, but that's okay.
Yeah. I think that's a narrative that I think is still sorely missed in today's world. Like, even with the advent of social media, people are using it as like a viewpoint into how hard they're working and how amazing their life is. Like, look at this, look at my grind set. I got up at 4 a.m. today and drank black coffee and then worked out for 6 hours and then ate like a slice of salmon and then I had my power nap, meditated for 3 hours and all this stuff. And it's just, blah, 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 blah. Whereas I feel like there's, from what I see as a participator in social media, I don't see enough, like, you're doing well. Do you. And you're kind of, even in school and everything, you're taught to be really aspirational, which is not a negative thing, but you're not almost allowed to think, well, I don't really know what I'm doing. Kind of coasting right now. Because it comes back to coaching for me, the idea that every silence has to be filled. Like, you can have your best thoughts in those pause moments, and when you're talking, if you're saying, well, if, and you're filling the silence, you're not allowing your brain to breathe. And I don't think just looking at your grind set and how you can optimize absolutely everything about your day is wholly positive for people.
No, it's not, and it just means you question every decision in every minute, and I don't think that's how we're designed to operate.
It feels like the messaging might have shifted a bit, but ultimately the underlying pressure feels like it might be the same. I don't know. You've got a better handle on this generationally, what the pressures are. Because some of the messages that I got, very traditional, career-based messages. Is that still something that
I had one of the earlier podcast guests was a chap named Alex, and he said something which stuck in my head, which is that, he's a similar age to me, mid to late 30s, and he said that a lot of us, this was about masculinity, a lot of us have inherited a script that's no longer valid. And I think my sense is that for men of about my age, similar, like relatively privileged upbringing, and fell into a business degree and fell into work, the script was still similar. I think the difference is that people are getting to a point and going, I thought this was where everything was supposed to, click. Got married, kids, job, and something is still missing, or you're there and you're doing it, but there's just a sense of listlessness or purposelessness with it. And I would say that it's shifting a bit, but what we don't yet have is a widely accepted alternative. And that is the work of this podcast, I guess, in some respects. That is the work of what I'm trying to do, which is like have these kinds of conversations to make it more acceptable to think about what the alternatives might be and what people might choose to fill their lives with in a way that doesn't shed and dispose of the virtues as you said, right, the things your father taught you that still serve us well. Like, hey, guess what? Like, if you still want to do stuff, you still have to work hard.
Yeah.
Like doing a cool Greek bike retreat, like you probably still had to work pretty hard, to like plan the routes and do the checks and all those things. So it's not that we're just shedding everything, but it's doing it in a way where it's complemented by virtues like stillness. And purpose. And other things like that.
It's just fascinating because like the idea of what's fulfilling, sometimes it is to step back, but sometimes it's to go and grab it. And this was something we always had a toss and turn when I was in Greece, because they said the more you put in, the more you get out. That was their little phrase. But it was always a bit tainted because we knew that we're getting paid shit all. And they're saying, well, if you run the quiz that goes from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. with the guests, it's going to be fun. And you're going to like, you get to meet people and like, it's fun for the guests, and the guests are what we're here to entertain, like these little minions. And yes, it was more fun if you put more effort in, but it got to the point where you're like, well, I don't want to because they're not appreciating it. So when I was out there, my mum's father passed away, which was a separate topic, a hard time. But I had to go home for a week to the funeral. And that was when the penny dropped of how I was going to spend the rest of the season, what I was going to value. Because before then, I'd just been like, yeah, do everything, knackered, but loving it and having a good time. But then I went home and had to organise getting back to the resort and flights and stuff. And it's Lesvos in Greece. There's only like 2 flights a day to Lesvos in peak season. It's like 1 a week off peak season. So they charter their own flight, this resort. And that kind of, when the penny dropped, I was like, well, how am I going to get back? I was like, can I come on the flight to the resort? And they were like, oh, well, we'll try. But if the flight's full, and we can't get you back to the resort. I'm like, okay, but if I'm not coming back, you've got one bike guide, and it's crap, and the routes are rubbish. I can't run my wildlife tour. Max has to do that. Max, the guy I did it with, and it's not his thing. And it's like, hang on, so you're willing to, just for an extra guest or 2, you're willing to basically terminate my employment or at least defer it. And I was like, what's that about? So I've worked so hard for you guys. And I'm like, you get feedback every week. People are encouraged to write things. I'm getting amazing feedback. I'm like topping these lists and getting all these like sort of approval from people, and like the manager's saying, like the resort manager's saying, oh, like it's just brilliant. Like you guys are really taking this bike guiding, and Max and I were both so invested in it, running amazing tours because we were so into it. And we're both pretty fit on the bike as well, because we heard that some bike guides who are just like basically drinking every night and living the season life were just sort of coming up the back of all the groups and not really engaging with the guests. Whereas we're like, yeah, let's go up at the front. Oh, we'll drop back for the other guests. And really making it a thing for people. That was apparently quite rare. And to know that they were willing to just cast that aside. One of the best bike guiding teams of the year.
Well, what did you learn from that then?
Well, I learned that I was like, well, actually, I'm going to do this for my own motivation. I was like, well, I'm going to continue to work fairly hard, but when I feel like I don't want to do it and I can't do it, I'm not going to. I'm not going to feel pressure to do so, because they're just like, I'm ultimately, in their eyes, something they can replace.
A commodity. I'm mindful of time, so there was a couple of things that I wanted to ask, which is, well, one of them is like, what have you learned from each other about what it is to be a man?
Do you want to start with that one?
I could start. Yeah, I mean, I guess in a lot of ways, it feels like I'm the one who learns more, because that's the nature of parenthood, is that you like basically part with your wisdom and your advice to me and help me grow up to be a man. But I feel I don't know how much I've learned from you, because a lot of when I was younger, it was just how it was. I've got a mum, I've got a dad, and I learn equal things from them. I feel probably what I learned was more about that stability. But you are also an incredibly emotionally articulate person. So I've seen someone who is not afraid to, for example, cry. Someone who's not afraid to tell someone how they're feeling, and someone who likes people and loves engaging. Because I see, like, the more traditional man is to keep those inside and repress them. So I've learned to emote and to tell people how I feel, which I think has been really valuable to me. And I don't feel like you've held me back. Maybe you haven't given me as much advice as other people, but I don't see that as a negative. You've let me become an individual. And I think, it sounds ridiculous, but you're just a decent person. So that made him cry.
Obviously.
Yeah, but you're a really decent person with good values. So it's hard for me to imagine learning anything different. And now I'm an adult and I have all my own.
In theory.
In theory, yeah. I mean, living at home with a broken leg, tough to feel like an adult. But yeah, I now feel like I'm going my own way, but I'm still learning a lot from you. But I'm, making my own way and deciding who I want to be, exclusive of you.
Yeah.
I don't want to just be you.
No.
I want to be myself. I want to take everything that you've given me, and I want to be a separate person. And I want to be supportive of people, but I've learned, that there is, no matter how much you gloss around the subject, there is still a huge problem with how men are encouraged to own up to their feelings and their struggles. Because it's still, even when you hear so much about how it's changing, and like men should talk, all these like movements and charities and podcasts to talk about it, ultimately there's going to be such a long as a spring, because I've grown up, it's simple things, like, for example, like when you're a kid, like, you're encouraged, like, if you sort of fall down, it's like, oh, get back up. Oh, you're all right, you're all right. And if you talk about...
Don't cry.
Yeah, and if you talk about other things, like you subconsciously, you only really look at girls, and like, oh, do you like her? Or do you like him?
Yeah.
Not a negative thing on anyone, but it's the structures of being a man from all generations and all philosophies are still there.
Yeah, just that crying thing. Because I've always been an emotional. But when I was younger, very, very. My dad, I think, found it quite difficult. It was just to cry a lot, and so his messaging was that that's not right, and he questioned who I was as a result of that. And that is just interesting to think about. And partly for me, it's a rediscovery of who I was and an acknowledgement that it's okay. It's okay to be that. I think, and what I've learned most from you, I think, is a reminder of those things. Like, you're incredibly calm most of the time. And I love that about you. You're very reasoned, and you're very caring and empathetic. And those are all good reminders. And I think also your battle with anxiety, to come out to at still a fairly young age, to be like, moving to the other side of that. And I see the younger you more than I used to, this carefree, happy kid. I see that more, and that's just a lovely reminder that you can change your life anytime you want. but it often doesn't feel that way. But yeah, you can click your fingers and change your life. I know it's possible. I've had it happen to me. I've seen it in others. But you get stuck and you feel you can't.
What do you say to the man who's feeling stuck right now?
There's so many sort of platitudes that you could say. It is a difficult one. The quote that comes to my mind, which really helped me at a time, was Carl Rogers. He said something like, "The curious paradox is that when I can accept myself as I am, then I can change." And I really found that helped me to just sit and go, actually, it's okay to be who I am, where I am right now. And once I was truly able to just accept that, things did change. So I don't know how that works, but for me, there's this process of acceptance to go through. It's okay. It's okay. And then I want to say something like, which will sound trite, it's all going to be okay. Everything works out. And that to hear that message when you're in the middle of a shitstorm is, I think, well, for me, probably not helpful. But I think it's true. So maybe it's a question of, if you knew that everything was going to be okay, what would that allow you to do now?
It's a great coaching question.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
What about you, James?
What about me? Yeah, everything's going to be okay. Like these, so in our flat up in Edinburgh, we have this quote, we have like an affirmation. It's like, these are the good days. That ultimately, if you have enough time and enough space to be questioning what's around you, you're in a good place. Like that's great. If you're literally not starving and like hunting for your food, like we did back in the day.
Yeah.
If you've got time to think about your relationships with people and worry about who you are as a person in the modern world and all of the tropes, and you've got time to think, time to listen, then that's great. Those are the good days, because the bad days are you cannot think about that and you're in survival mode. And you don't want to be in survival mode thinking about those days.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good coaching advice, gents. It's almost like you've had conversations like this with people before.
Yeah, who would have thought it, eh?
I suppose, well, look, thank you both for your honesty and vulnerability. How was it having this conversation with each other?
Great. I mean, this is, again, let's coach, but this is what coaching is about, is creating a space for conversation and space to breathe. We don't do this. Like, we wouldn't sit down for an hour and talk to each other about our relationship and about our lives. I've learned things I didn't know about Dad today because you chat, and I've learned a bit more about what you did before coaching, and we've dug deeper and we've learned about ourselves, and that's great. And I see this as a great opportunity to have a chat, and I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Great.
Same here. Maybe we should do this more often. Well, maybe not the podcast, maybe
we should
make
have a
time to have.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, we could. We could do that. I mean, one of the things I did think when James went into coaching was, well, that's interesting. There's other things that we might do in the future.
Yeah. Well, the listeners can wait with bated breath for episode 1.
Might be waiting for a while.
Yeah. I don't think we have much.
Any closing thoughts or anything that you haven't shared that you kick yourself if you didn't go off your chest now?
I think that there was a real growing, for me it was a painful thing because I let it bottle up and then it exploded. It's one way for it to happen, but I think trying to avoid that kind of precipitous change in your life could be helpful. So if you're unhappy, taking time to consider that and think, and genuinely think openly about what other possibilities exist here. What do I want to do? I think there's a selfish, the word selfish is very interesting. I don't see it necessarily as a negative word at all. Like, be more selfish. Take some time to think about what you want and what you want to do. Because if you can find purpose and happiness in your life, then it's going to change everybody else's life around you and make things better. And actually, I think one of the things to do in life is to find what that is for you, and be a better person as a result of having taken some time to be selfish.
And if you don't do it for you, do it for your kids, as we've heard today.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, look, thanks so much, gents. Speedy recovery, James, look forward to hearing your podcast.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. So there you go. That was Marcus and James Stone there. I really enjoyed that conversation. I think, as you can tell, they're both coaches, so they do a lot of deep thinking and deep work with others. And there were some really interesting themes that came up there for me. You know, what it means to be a father, making changes in your own life as a father. I've got 2 young kids, and what that can mean your children inherit as a narrative that they'll take into their own lives and the impact that can have. Feelings of stuckness, what to do with those, and the small changes that we can make that will have a massive impact, not just on our lives, but on the lives of those around us. So once again, thanks for listening to Feel Good for Men Who Want Change. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and share the podcast, and that's how this will grow, episode by episode, man by man. Thanks very much. Work hard, be kind, and I'll catch you at the next one.